people scale back to just one command destroyer, and then using that extra points to protect that command destroyer a lot better.
Balgorn, Balgorn.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Alliance Tournament Explained here on the CCP Twitch, presented by Plus 10 Gaming and Streamfleet. I'm joined by a whole host of amazing guests here in the studio today. We have Alexei Aksan, the stats man for Plus 10, and the guy who's responsible for all those dank AF graphs that you see on the stream. We have Black Bart Pirate, all the way from America. He's gone home now, back to the US of A, but he is still with us, still here to give us his thoughts and opinions on matches that we've already seen and to help us just understand things a little bit more. We got Mr. EQ11, the man who is operating all the cameras that you see on stream. He is the one that's pushing the buttons and making things happen. He is the glue that holds us together. We've also got Jin Tan, or Yin Tan as he sometimes prefers to be known, and Sutonia. The two of them, of course, have a bet, which we'll talk about a little later on in the show today. Both of them on the CSM, both of them extremely knowledgeable. One of them wears bling suits, and the other is Sutonia. So, welcome to Alliance Tournament Explained. Guys, thank you for coming.
Well, it's brilliant to be here. Thank you for having us and bring us all together today. I'm really looking forward to breaking down some of these matches because we've had just a cavalcade of really exciting ones, or at least ones that went to time and had really exciting finishes, which we don't often see in the AT.
Yeah, there was some really sort of incredible matches just in terms of either pure piloting skill or the comps that were fielded, or even just upsets that no one really saw. It was kind of the weekend of upsets. Lots of really interesting ones. Specifically, we'll get to them later on. For example, there was the NCPL match. There was the Volta versus Samurai Sold Out match. Both of them upsets. But as we say, we'll get on to them later on. So this is the Alliance Tournament Explained. So just to be clear, what we're going to do is we're going to break down a little bit of what happened last week. We're going to discuss the comps. We're going to try and sort of explain them in as simple terms as we can for those of you who may be new to the Alliance Tournament and competitive EVE esports. And then we'll look at some of the matches that we've just talked about briefly, and we'll go into them in some detail, and we'll sort of run through them slowly, and we'll work out exactly what happened in these matches. But for the first part, we're going to look at the Vidra versus Black Legion match. So what we saw is Vidra bringing kind of like an updated version of last year's famous ECM control comp that they brought. This time it's a little bit different. Obviously, with the Highlander rule, you can only bring one of every ship. And obviously there's some new ships as well. So the Triglavian ships have come in, the important one being the Leshak. So Alexei, why don't you just run us through what we're looking at with this comp that Vidra have brought here?
Okay, so what we're seeing really is a sort of updated version of what they brought last year. They've adapted to the Highlander rule, and they've also adapted to the fact that there are these new interesting ships by fitting in things like the Leshak and the Vedmark into the comp. Particularly, Highlander rule meant that they couldn't do things like doubling up on the sacrileges, and I believe it was the Rooks that they doubled up on last year rather than having the Rook Falcon. So you've got a bit more of a spread in the ships that are there, but the core pretty much remains the same. You've got sacrileges being the heavy tackle. You've got the effectively 3 Caldari Recons by bringing that Chameleon for the additional jams, as well as a huge amount of DPS. And the Guardian provides...
Let me interrupt you quickly there. Can you just explain to us, what is a Chameleon? Like, that's not a very common ship. We don't see that fielded very often. And for those who don't really know maybe some of the Alliance Tournament prize ships, can you just tell us a little bit about the Chameleon itself?
Of course. The Chameleon is, in effect, the bastard child of a Gila and a Rook, being an ECM bonus chip with a It's got the same Guristas limit as the other Guristas ships in that it only fields 2 drones, but these are even more superpowered than the ones on the Gila. Aside from that, it is sort of a straight up recon, cloaky, bastard, evil thing that bears the fantastic quote in its lore description that some pilots believe ECM to be dishonorable. You should jam them first and kill them last.
One of my favorite quotes from this game, I think. So anyway, yes, continue please with your explanation of the Vidra team.
Of course. Yeah, compared to last year where they brought a sort of a prophecy and a Pontifex, the links, they've managed to swap that down to a Pontifex and Magus. The double rooks that they had becomes Rook Falcon, and you maintain a lot of the same core. And I think the major thing is you get a lot of points from the reduced recon cost this year, sort of across the board, and that frees you up to try and fit this Leshak in at the top of your comp, and that just gives you this massive amount of control, and also, as we've seen a lot of the other ECM comps, an insane amount of damage, because you can spool that up and you can get incredible amounts of damage out of that 19-point investment that turns this from the comp that last year would be winning matches like 33 points to 12 into a comp that will sit there this time and just wipe an entire team over time. And I think we see this eventually go 100-0 against the Black Legion team that unfortunately just wasn't prepared for this.
It's actually worth noting that this isn't even the ultimate, I suppose, form of this comp, because I believe Vidra Reloaded have a Leshak flagship, which they chose not to bring for this match. In the future,
they
do you
can't bring
think
it.
that we can?
They can't bring it with the unique. The rule is you can only bring a flag. You can't bring the flagship if you have a unique on the field, and you can't bring a unique if you have a flagship.
Cool.
Is that an update for this year? Because I previously thought you could bring, like, for example, a flag.
It was last year too.
Okay.
It's been since AT15.
So last year, were they not able to bring a flag Balgorn and Rabisu? I thought that was fairly common.
You absolutely bring flag Balgorn and Rabisu.
So Tony, are you sure about that? Because I thought you could bring your flag plus a unique. I didn't think a flag counted as a unique.
Specifically, we saw teams bringing a standard Balgorn and a Rabisu, or a Rabisu and core as an alternate. We get the BC core that was just the core of AT15. It has been a rule for the last 2 years.
Oh,
Okay. We'll get some
but
clarification.
the commentators learn about the AT.
Oh, that's really
Exactly.
fucking
See,
weird.
this is
All
AT
right.
Explain. This is
don't
not
tell
just
anyone.
for you guys, it's also for us. This is a complicated game. No one said Eve was simple. Jin Tan, take me through what's going on here with Black Legion. So immediately they rushed in as the Vidra team ran away. Why exactly are the Black Legion team choosing to rush in on this comp here?
Well, the Black Legion team basically have nothing to do but attempt to rush in. They got to hope that some of these jams, just don't land early on, and that they're able to get either this Vindicator, maybe the Legion, I don't know, potentially a Vedmak on top of one of the squishier ships on the Vidra comp, and just start pushing through the pushing through the tank that they have, thanks to Hugh Lightbender in that Guardian. They're hoping basically that they can just pray to RNGesus, get that Vindicated through, get those 90% webs on. Ideally, that Chameleon. You probably won't get that onto the Rook or the Falcon. Just start burning through it. If you can start to kill off the ECM, then you can claw back the control game, and from there it'll go in your favor. But as you can see here, this doesn't really happen. Vidra spread their jams well, and just effectively, they barely take armor damage really.
So just for rules clarification, we have now learned that yes, Satonia was correct. This year, but not last year and not before, you can only bring one unique, and that flagship counts towards that. So this year, Vidra in this particular comp would not be able to bring the flagship Leshak plus that Chameleon. They would have to swap that out with something else or not bring the flag. Now, looking back at this match, Alexei, you can probably clarify here, but the replay tool doesn't show jam attempts. Is that correct?
The replay, I'm guessing it doesn't. Then yes, it should have been showing jam attempts because it has access to the same information as Fancy to do so. But I didn't realize until now that it doesn't.
Ah, well, there you go.
Something
We're
I
all
actually
learning.
want to point out here is the bans from the Black Legion team. Look at those. They're so targeted against the comp that Vidra bought last match. That's very directly taking out the Amar core. So I guess we're seeing what Vidra thinks might be, the second best team, or the second best composition.
I mean, that's a major fuck up on Black Legion's part. Sorry, because there's really, like, you don't ban out a first weekend team comp, right? So they basically massively banned the heck out of that Newt comp, which, I mean, it did make Vidra show their hand. I would say that this Chameleon setup is probably a little bit better than the Newt Control setup, because Newt Control setup you can just change by bringing ships that aren't as affected by energy neutralizers, where ECM's gross. But I think Black Legion, they went a little bit hard here. They're like, okay, well, we really don't want to see Newts, and Vidra was just like, that's sweet. I'll just I guess we'll just jam you, so you literally can't use your ships for anything, as opposed to just maybe getting a few shots off. I remember Laz was talking. He was hyping up Black Legion a little bit. He's like, "Oh yeah, we've got a plan for the Newt comp. We got a plan for the Newt comp." And then as soon as he saw this, he buried his head in his hands and was like, "No, guys, we had a plan. Why did you ban out the thing we had a plan to fight?"
I actually want to ask you a question there. You said you shouldn't ban out week 1 comps. Why is that?
I wouldn't necessarily say you shouldn't ban out week 1 comps, but what you should respect is the fact that if they are showing it on their very first match, it is almost guaranteed. Like a team like Vidra, a team like Hydra, a team like PL, NC, Tuskers, any of these top 4-tier teams, you don't bring your best setup on week 1, because that means that you have several weeks to figure out a way to counter your best setup, right? So if Vidra and Hydra are bringing a basically mirrored up neutralizer comp on week 1, they're saying, hey, not only is this good enough to beat all you guys, this isn't our best setup. Please waste time trying to counter it, because they know that, if you spend a bunch of time okay, well, we figured out this master setup to beat the Vangel setup, they have figured out a way to beat that already. So, they've figured out a way to beat their own setup. They've also figured out a way to beat the things that beat their setup. You basically have to recognize that they're mind gaming you by bringing this setup.
Wow, so that's the kind of level that you're playing at when you're a captain of the AT.
Yeah, you have to recognize that there's a huge metagame here, and they're forcing you into the setups here. But I mean, this match was brutal for Black Legion, but they kind of meted themselves out, which is that's why they lost 100-0. It was gross. I think I commentated it, and it's like, oh, this is horrible.
So it was a really interesting match just to see Vidra now bringing out 2 interesting comps, both with Alliance Tournament ships. So really flashing that bling out. The ECM comp, as we discussed, something we kind of saw last year. This is kind of a rehash of it, but it's still just as effective, dominating Black Legion there, taking a pretty solid win for Vidra. Let's look at from sort of the really top tier. So obviously Vidra last year won the Alliance Tournament. They're one of the better teams, if not, you could say the best right now. And let's look at maybe the sort of the mid-tier teams that haven't historically had the same success as a team like Vidra, but are still certainly serious competitors within the Alliance Tournament. And we have the Snuff versus Immediate Destruction match, which was by most considered to be one of the more interesting matches of the entire weekend. Jintan, do you want to just talk a little bit about that match?
Yeah, it was an interesting match for sure. I wasn't actually a huge fan of a lot of the decisions that got made in it. There were a lot of things that I think both teams did wrong, but it ended up creating this really back and forth momentum switching match, which ended up hinging on the fact that an Arbitrator and Praxis were left alive for the Immediate Destruction team. And it came down to literally them Immediate Destruction managing to tank their Praxis with an AAR that was out of pace, just barely surviving against the tracking of a Paladin. It was an absolute ridiculous match, but it should honestly have gone in Snuffed Out's favor. It was their match to lose, and they absolutely lost it, in my opinion.
So, I mean, I've got the comps up in front of me. Let's just have a quick run through. So, Tony, do you have the comps up as well?
Yeah, I do.
Do you want to just run us through kind of what these teams have brought here, like the difference between the two comps?
Yes, if you kind of look at sort of the lower end of both Snuffed Out and Immediate Destruction, they kind of have sort of a very similar style here, except so they both have a Synesis, they both have a Vexor, and Immediate Destruction has got sort of a more invested in their sort of lower end cruisers. They have the Arbitrator, they have that Mauler there as well, and they're paying for that by not having the Ashimu or the Sacrilege that Snuffed Out have. And then on the top end, we've got a Paladin for the Snuffed Out team in sort of the points that they've saved by not going for those Brutixes in links. So I'd say that the biggest difference really, and if you look at the sort of control bar of Snuffed Out versus the damage bar of Immediate Destruction, is that Snuffed Out are sort of are going for more powerful links and they're going for more control in that Ashimu, but in doing so, they're trading the damage that those Brutixes bring sort of over the command destroyers, and they also just have like more distributed sort of tackle options with the Mauler that they have extra and the Arbitrator as well, which probably going to be tracking disruptors, a mix of tracking disruptors and potentially tackle.
Cool. So, Jin Tan, see the bars that Tony just talked about there, the control bar specifically. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what is the control bar and what affects that?
Yeah, control is effectively the bar that we use as both the commentary team and on the desk and in basically everywhere to quantify the amount of electronic warfare and ways to interact with the other team that both teams have brought. Effectively, what you should think of control as is disruption. It's how many webs have you brought? How much can you slow the other team down, stop them from moving in towards you? How much ECM can you bring that can stop your opponents from locking you and applying damage? How much tracking disruptors you can apply to your opponents, which will make their guns worse? Things like that. Even worse than that is neutralizers. We see those used very, very heavily this tournament, as we have seen in most tournaments, really, because those can stop you from activating your own modules. So that's what control is. Control is your ability to interact with the other person's game plan and, stop them from achieving.
Cool, thank you. Now, let's have a look at this match as it starts to get underway. So, Tony, can you tell us, what both teams are doing here is the way they kind of all run in towards each other? What's going on? What's the game plan from these two teams?
Yeah, so it seems like the game plan from Snuffed Out with those two cruisers, the Sacrilege and the Ashimu, is probably, you can kind of see them trying to get that on top of the back line. I guess the idea is that if they get the Ashimu sitting on top of the logistic cruiser, the Aneros of Immediate Destruction, he can just bleed it dry while Snuffed Out picks off the other targets. You can see here that they're shooting a Brutix, they're shooting a Vedmak. And they're trying to send the Vexor, the Vedmak, basically the Ashimu and the Sacrilege sort of behind the enemy lines and just to pin down the logistics cruiser. I think you can kind of see that now. I'm not sure if that's the actual logistics cruiser that you can see on your screen right now with the sort of red dots around it that has that Snuffed Out guy going on top of it. It's kind of hard to see on the replay tool, unfortunately. You can't see the brackets in space.
That's the Ashimu that we're following at the moment, actually. That's being primaried by Immediate Destruction.
Yeah, so that Ashimu, I believe he's tried to sort of go out there. Is that the nearest that he's on? I don't know. I can't see. But I assume that was what he was trying to do. Maybe it's a Vexor or Vedmak instead. He's tried to sort of pick something out of position for his team, but in doing so, he's also put himself...
Vedmak, yeah.
Yeah, so he's tried to pick up this ship that's sort of out of position for his team, but in doing so, he's also kind of put himself out of position as well.
So I think that's something we're going to see a lot in the next couple of replays is these very key ships kind of single-handedly out-piloting themselves into the wrong position and then getting taken down by teams that are smart. So, this Ashimu, Ashimus are, I don't remember who said it, but someone said it's the worst pirate cruiser in the game in regards to tank and speed and stuff. So him going out there and getting caught means he's done. And the problem is when you invest that many points into a ship and it has so much control potential, losing it is just brutal. And I think that's what happens to Snuffed Out. I remember being in the studio and being like, oh, Snuffed Out has this. This is super easy. And spoiler alert, I don't think they actually end up winning this one because of piloting mistakes by this Hashimi. One person messing up can lose the game for you.
Yeah, I mean, it
So-
does look initially quite good for them as well, because they do kill that Brutix, and trading an Ashimu for a Brutix isn't the worst in the world. Like, killing links and damage is kind of worth the Ashimu, in my opinion. I think that the problem with the Ashimu and the Snuffed Out team is that they're very heavily relying on resists in this fight. That's why they have the Pontifex and the Magus instead of the battle cruisers. But the Vexor and the Ashimu are sort of the only two ships that Snuffed Out have that don't have a Tech 2 resistance profile. And it would have been much better to send, maybe the Magus to go screen, maybe the Sacrilege instead, something that can tank a lot better.
I gotta say, I really have to compliment the tackle switching there. Like, you saw how quick that switch was from the Ashimu to the Vedmak in terms of Scram Web. It went down after that. I think they finally finished neuting it off. But that is like some actual legit good piloting from the immediate destruction side. And then we see all mapped out, and the Vexor just get almost completely deleted there.
Yeah,
Just as a quick interjection, if you guys in chat have any particular questions about what you're seeing here, if you want to know anything about the Alliance tournament that you maybe don't understand, just post them in chat. We'll see if we can address them and hopefully answer your questions. Bart, I just want to, you spoke a little bit there, a few people, about positioning. What do you mean when you talk about positioning in the terms of the Alliance tournament?
So just like in TQ, just like in in all honesty, pretty much every single game that exists nowadays, Overwatch, World of Warcraft, EVE Online, every MMO, generally, like we've put ranges on our abilities to prevent us from hitting from across the entire thing. And so the Oneros on Snuffed Outside and also on Immediate Destruction, the same ship, it's it's a logistic ship. It reps other ships up, and it does have a limited range. What happened in this specific situation is the Snuffed Out Ashimu actually gets not completely out of range, but out of range enough of the Oneros that he's not able to be kept alive. So, he basically does the equivalent of like flying into the enemy fleet, getting out of range of his Logi, and just going down really easily. And it's something we see several times. I mean, we're at a point in the game where people are good enough to generally survive as long as they don't make mistakes. And once you do make a mistake, you're going to get punished for it quite quickly. At this point, I think this was the second weekend, pretty late in it. Like, every single team here is a top 32 or a top 24 team at this point, so they're better than the 50th percentile, and they play like that.
And so, Alexei, like, it looked like for quite a while that Snuffed Out were in control of this match, although there was a few mistakes. They took us an early points lead, and then yet they managed to lose. Like, where did it sort of all go wrong for Snuffed Out on this match?
Well, this is one I took apart earlier because I genuinely wasn't sure how they did it. Either they managed to trade out the Oneros favorably, they kept theirs alive longer, which is generally quite a force multiplier because you're gaining so many hit points back every second your Oneros is alive. It's quite a contribution to keeping your team up. And then they traded out the immediate destruction Leshak before they lost their own Leshak, which should have been, again, this massively advantageous thing, is the Leshak should have been what was dealing most of the damage on the immediate destruction side at that point. But it came down to breaking it down from kill mails, from all the VODs and things like this. Two major issues. One, Snuffed Out left a Vedmark up, and Vedmarks, they have that same spooling mechanic as the Leshak. They can do a huge amount of damage in the sort of late game cleanup if you leave them on their own. That Vedmark did the majority of the damage on every kill that Immediate Destruction will take from this point on, aside from that Leshak. And the other problem that I kind of have with how Snuff played this was their Leshak fit has a lot of resistances, but it has no local rep and no plate. And that's kind of what let it down here. As soon as the Oneros was down, that Leshak didn't have the tonnage to try and survive long at all.
I will note that it did actually have some repair drones on it for a while, but those were actually smart bombed off by the Praxis. You can actually see that it was getting remote repairs just after the Leshak of Immediate Destruction died, but prior to it actually dying. That was something I wasn't able to really cover in the match, but it really did impact the momentum. quite a bit because it gave Snuffed Out like that chance, that little bit of buffer that it had left, that could potentially have swung the match in their direction. You'll see when it gets to when it gets a little lower there, the
So-
Leshak and Snuffed Out will get reps.
As Jin pointed out, this match going into it looked like definitely was Snuff's match to lose, and unfortunately lose they did. Immediate Destruction came back from a points deficit to win the match. A very tight match, and a lot of people said one of the better matches of last weekend. Immediate Destruction going through to the next stage of the losers bracket. But let's move on and talk a little bit about the next match we're going to analyze today, and that is the Weekend Warriors versus Brave. So this match was really sort of back and forward for quite a while. It was hard to tell who's going to win. Is it A? Is it B? And both teams just flying extremely well. Specifically, the ECM wing. So, Tony, what happened about the ECM wing in this match?
Are we looking at the right match here? I thought it was of Soundmind versus Brave Collective. I think this is a match from way earlier. This is like one that Brave won, right?
Yes. This was a match from last weekend that Brave managed to take against Weekend Warriors.
Yeah, I think you have the wrong match right now. Yeah. Anyway, I think what happened in this match, I'm sure you'll have it up on the screen pretty soon, is that Brave became very predictable in my opinion. I think this was is this the fourth time that they've played?
I believe it would have been, yes.
The fourth.
Yeah, so Brave Collective, in every single match, they brought a very heavy ECM comp. Even with severe ECM bans. I think there was one team that banned 3 ECM ships against Brave newbies, and they still brought a full ECM comp. So I think they kind of had their one trick pony, and it was out of the hat for a long time. And Of Soundmind basically just they bought like a ton of remote sensor boosters. I'm posting a kill, just a link to one of the kills that the Brave got of Soundmind Purifier, and a lot of their ships are fit like this, where they have 2 remote sensor boosters fitted. So they were expecting ECM. They bought a lot of remote sensor boosters, so they were in good shape to deal with sort of a really pure ECM comp. And I believe they also, because they had so much ECCM, as well as like a Kingslayer style comp as well, kind of, but not really. It's sort of got like the similar like top end of a Kingslayer, but not that much application. They were just able to blow up the widow of Brave Collective, like almost straight away in the start of the match.
I think we're ready to see the replay now. EQ has managed to find it in the archives and pulled it up, so we can throw that up on the screen and start to go through a little bit about it. There we go. So, Jin Tan, why don't you break down? So Tony's given us a little bit about the ECM comp of Brave Collective. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Of Soundmind has brought here and how that counters, in this case, the ECM comp?
Since Jintan doesn't seem to be talking. Oh, do you want to go ahead then?
Yeah, sorry. Do you want me to go through the Of Soundmind comp? Sorry?
Yes, please.
Yeah, no worries. The Of Soundmind comp is, it looks like kind of basically a missile composition. That's all it screams to me. You've got that Fleet Typhoon, you've got the regular Typhoon, you've got the Praxis. What you're probably going to try and do is just Kingslay, or that was probably the intent of this composition. Get the Fleet Typhoon, the Typhoon, and the Praxis on top of the enemy logistics, and just pound through it with either rapid heavies or cruisers. You've got so much protection, you've got so much utility, especially in that Fleet Typhoon. There was a reason why we saw it so heavily in AT12 and AT13, and to an extent AT14. Of Soundmind obviously intended to apply that in this match.
Bart, what do you make of Brave bringing the same thing multiple times? And is this maybe too predictable for them? Is that maybe why they lost this?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, we were talking about it before the match, and I even was like, oh, I bet Brave's going to bring their Flag Golem with their Tinker setup, and then they did. I mean, if I can make that prediction with like thinking about it for 20 seconds, Sound Mind, who has way more in this than, I do, was able to figure it out real freaking quick. And, they brought an armor comp, which gives you lots of mid slots to put ECM in. They brought a lot of remote ECM. They predicted, and if you look at their bans too, they specifically banned out the other team setup that Brave brought. So, Sound played them. It's the same meta thing. Like they just look at it and they're like, hey, if we ban this specific setup and we bring this, we know that you only have 1 or 2 setups. We know that you're in the elimination bracket, so you're probably going to field your flagship. We've seen what your flagship comp is on day 1. So, going back to talking about the Vydra thing, if you those day 1 team setups usually don't show your best. I think Brave showed their flag setup on day 1, and Sound just played them. Like they knew exactly what they were going to bring. Brave brought exactly what they were going to bring, and if you know what the opponent's going to do, you can counter it completely. So Brave just they just ate shit and died. Like it sucks for Brave. Like I feel bad for them. They did so well last year, but you can't just bring the same setup every single match, or you can't show people like, hey, this is my best team setup. I'm going to bring it as my last resort, because if you do, this happens to Sound. They did the same thing. It's like the equivalent of knowing your opponent only uses damage, EM damage, and taking full EM and then beating them for it. That's just sucks for Brave, but there you go.
Let's not forget that their Golem pilot thought that he was Bastioned, which is why he didn't move the whole match, despite 1, not being able to field a Bastion module, and 2, he literally didn't have a Bastion module fit to his ship, but yet he still believed he was in Bastion that whole match somehow. A very, very special case, I believe. So
That's some mega lol right there.
Yeah, like apparently afterwards, people told him, like, you went to Bastion, you didn't have a Bastion module fit, and he was sort of, oh. But I mean, this apart from, the main reason we bring this match up is to talk about predictability and the fact that you can't just, as Bart says, bring the same thing over and over and over again. This goes back a little bit to what we saw with Vidra, that first match. They brought that Vangal comp, and as the guys were saying, this is showing, hey, this isn't our best comp. Like, you can ban this out, but we're going to have other comps in our back pocket. Brave have done kind of the opposite. They've brought their best comp, and then they've brought it again, and everyone sees this, it realizes this is their best comp, and then they just find a way to beat it. They let you bring it, and then they beat your comp. Predictability within the Alliance tournament is a major, major thing. But speaking of predictability, let's talk about the inevitable predictability of Pandemic Legion losing to Northern Coalition. Bart, you have some horses in this game.
I do. I was there. It was real. I was commentating. Somebody Twitch clipped it, and I'm currently winning the CCP clips of all time right now. So good for me. Gotta toot my own horn there a bit. I've been watching a lot of the practices between NC and PL, so I kind of had a little bit of a feeling on how this would go, but I didn't want to say anything because I had a couple certain other people in the studio telling me that PL was going to win. So I kept my mouth shut to make sure I didn't jinx it. But we kind of see this interesting thing here where NC Dot actually brought the team setup that I had kind of accidentally leaked and got in trouble for by my team captain, who was like, why the hell did you tell people that? And I was like, well, you brought it to test open. And he's like, yeah, well, it's actually really good. So NC Dot brought that. And PL brought a 2 armor battleship with a Rabisu setup. And, what I've noticed from running, basically running statistics and checking every single team comp at the first weekend is 2 armor battleship teams actually suck and they lose a lot. So, right off the bat, NC Dot had this huge advantage just because of their team setup. And even still, both teams played really, really well. But the cursed pilot of Brainstraw, which I think we talk about not calling people out specifically on their piloting during the actual AT, but screw it. Like he flew himself into the NC Dot team and got out of position. So it's like the culmination of a lot of the things we've been talking about today. Like he went in a little bit too deep, trying to get around, gets caught, and just goes down so fast. So
you say so fast that it's not really the case at all, as though he gets tackled within the first 2 minutes. There aren't any points on the board until nearly 5 minutes into this match.
I guess time is all relative. I think Einstein said that, but so he's really smart, which means I'm really smart. But the whole point about it is like he goes down and like it's inevitable. As soon as he's grabbed, you know he is gone. Like that's the way that this game works. This highish level Alliance tournament plays. If you get caught in that position and you can't clear tackle off the target, they're done. And you got to recognize like the Leshaks, the way they are. I mean, it takes them 2 minutes to ramp up, and they go from 1,500-ish damage to like 2.8k. So. Yeah, I mean, so fast. You're totally right. But like, as soon as he got caught out, we were even talking about it. We were like, oh, he's done. Like, he's dead. It may take 2 or 3 minutes, but that was it. Like, as soon as he got caught, we knew that the match was decided for NC.
So
Would you say that the curse being caught also put positional pressure on the rest of the Pandemic Legion team? Because now the Rabisu has to stay within repair range of that curse, and it kind of anchors the rest of the team and forces them to rotate around the ship that's caught. Or do you just leave it for dead?
No, that's exactly how it is. Because like the problem is that curses are one of those ships that they're so good that you see them getting banned a lot by these higher tier teams, because it's a ship that has energy newt power that is comparable. It's not quite Balgorn level, but it's pretty much higher neuting power than any other ship in the game that is not a Balgorn. And then they have tracking disruptors that are bonused. And while we cannot use scripts on our tracking disruptors to make them really good, curse unbonused tracking disruptors are still ridiculous. Sutonia, you probably know the exact number, but I want to say it's like 35% tracking in optimal range.
Yeah, it's something really super strong like that. I think it's like 33%. I assume they're getting links too from the Pontifex is probably running an info link for him.
But yeah, it's the key ship. Like by itself, a curse is just so ridiculously good that you'll see, if you go back and watch a lot of these matches, most of these top tier teams either are banning a curse or they are picking a curse. No matter what, they're that good. And if you look at the Northern Coalition side, you look at the Pandemic Legion side, besides those, the battleship cores and the logistics, the next like big linchpin ship is the curse. The differences between a battleship core or logistics, curses aren't super tanky, curses aren't sitting really far away from everything, and curses actually have to get in close enough to apply their newts. So yeah, as soon as that happened, I mean, that was it.
So both these teams kind of have control comps, and we say about sort of 4 or 5 minutes of the control war and just both teams trying to position themselves to be in the best possible position. And as you mentioned, Bart, that curse moving in, perhaps putting himself a little bit out of position and forcing the rest of the PL team to anchor around it. But when we say control comps, Sutonia, what specifically are we referring to? Like, what other options are there other than control comps?
Oh, there's different archetypes of different comps, and it depends on what you're really trying to do. So a control comp, as we mentioned, generally tries to win the match in more of a slow burn style. So that'll be like the Vidra ECM comp that we saw, where generally they're going to jam out the logistics and the key threats and slowly pick it apart. With these two teams on the Northern Coalition Pandemic Legion side, they're trying to just nuke people dry with the Balgor and get the Vindicator to sit on someone. And the Leshak of the Northern Coalition side is just going to keep ramping up on whatever the Vindy has, and then everything else can just hopefully just tank, and the key threats are going to get tracking disrupted by the curse, and things are going to get guns turned off by curse newts, etc. Basically just pressuring the entire team. There's also sort of rush-based comps, or which we mostly see Kingslayer, which essentially are comps that are designed around killing a single key ship really quickly in the match and then snowballing from there. So Kingslayer, for example, would try to kill something like the enemy logistics straight away, and then they focus heavily on trading without logistics. You often see things like Fleet Typhoons, Barghest, regular Typhoons that just have a big buffer tank. They don't have the Tech 2 resists that a lot of these more sort of mid-range and control comps have. But because they have so much raw buffer and they have a lot of DPS and rep bots, they can generally, even without a logistics of their own, they can still win and out-trade. And we also kind of see, I guess, all-in kind of comps, which is sort of like Rapid Lights. They can be flown very similar to Kingslayer, but they're more about just trying to snowball early on and just kill as much as possible, and then just start winning based on having superior numbers.
So, Alexei, this match, where do you think it really kind of broke apart from PL? Because we were almost 5 minutes into the match and no one has died on either side. Yet the match finishes 100 points to nil for NC. Like, what happened? Like, where did it all fall apart?
I think you can see exactly where it fell apart in this shot. What we were seeing around that Curse of Brainstraw, the swarm of repair bots that were providing so much of the repping power on it, just isn't there anymore. And it's been work from the support wing of the NC Dot team clearing that out. I didn't particularly see that they had smart bombs on top of it. It was mainly just frigates blapping them one by one, but that absolutely crippled the ability of Pandemic Legion to keep that curse up. And though it was sort of said earlier that the Leshak, its ramping damage, is potentially what gives the inevitability of killing that curse, the Leshak did very little to that curse, in fact. Pandemic Legion focused the majority of their newts and their control at the Leshak to try and stop it from ramping and keep resetting the gun. And the net result of that was that the Vindicator for Northern Coalition actually dealt about 3 times as much damage to that curse and dealt the majority of the damage that broke through it, while Pandemic focused the newt control that typically we would see shutting down the guns on a Vindicator, because it's entirely cap reliant for everything that the Vindicator does. That was all swung over to the Leshak to try and both win sort of the neuting war by stopping the Leshak neuting and stop that gun from ramping up.
Yeah, so it was, I mean, I guess everyone expected this to be an extremely good match, but I think most people still favoured Pandemic Legion in this case. They're the team with probably the better heritage, if not the best heritage, of Alliance tournaments. But NC did take that victory. It was a pretty solid victory. PL lost that Rubisu, which is an Alliance tournament logistics ship. Incredibly expensive, probably north 250, 300 billion. Basically the armor Etana, which is the shield Rubisu. So circular reference there. But it was an extremely interesting match to watch from an analytical point of view. PL, of course, dropping down to the losers bracket at the end of that match. But I believe we're going to go to a quick ad break, and then we'll be back to look a little bit forward to next weekend and some of the matches you can expect. So EQ, toss it to the ads.
Warp drive active.
Hi, my name is Durhadur, Reddit CEO Emeritus. My interests include streaming. Hey, speaking of streaming, you should check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Durhadur. MultidollarMediaEmpire.com. Check out my Twitter, twitter.com/Durhadur. MultidollarMediaEmpire.com.
Eve Dublin returns on August 31st and September 1st for a 2-day event. For tickets and more information, visit evedublin.com.
Hi guys, welcome back to Alliance Tournament Explained. So we went over a couple of matches from last week in a bit more detail. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the matches, but just not quite as much detail as we've been to the last few, but just primarily a couple of key upsets that we saw last week and just maybe talk a little bit about them. First one we're going to talk about is the Laserhawks being upset by BSOD. Laserhawks last year had a great run, finishing, I believe, third in the Alliance tournament behind Hydra and Vidra. So they're not a bad team at all. They're a really good team there. So for them to be upset by a team like BSOD, who don't have that kind of heritage, was a bit of a surprise. A lot of people expected Laserhawks to do a little bit better, perhaps. Alexei, you are a member of the Laserhawks. Can you tell us maybe what happened? Like, how surprised were you to see Laserhawks dropping that match?
It was an awkward one. Looking back on it, I'm not surprised at all that it went the way it did. And I think I said on the desk before it was going to be our first proper challenge as sort of the new Laserhawks team, because we've had a lot of internal shuffling with pilots leaving us and new pilots stepping up to the mark. So this was sort of the first time we properly tested ourselves. And unfortunately, we hit an absolute wall because BSOD, this is sort of harkens back to 80s of old. BSOD knew the comp that was going to be brought. Not so much because we were being massively predictable, it was a new comp in the AT, but because it was perhaps something we'd shown a bit too much in scrims. BSOD had a chat with one of our scrim partners, and they ended up bringing an incredibly hard counter with burst jammers and damps across the board that was designed to just completely shut down the comp that we brought to Hawks, which was this high damage Tinker. As it was, they had, I honestly hope they bought lottery tickets that weekend as well, because they had incredibly good luck on getting those jams, saved a ship at the knife edge, and then about the 8-minute mark in, they'd saved that ship, our comp started to fall apart, and it was a shame. But I think we have an opportunity to prove that we're still here in how we bounce back from this. But it was a very good team sort of putting Laserhawks back in our place to a degree.
So a lot of people sort of accuse Laserhawks of having an easy run through a lot of the bracket last year, and to an extent this bracket this year as well. Now that they've been dropped down into the losers bracket, how do you think they're going to do for the rest of the tournament? Alexei, do you think Laserhawks still a top 4 contender, or do you think maybe this year a little bit shaken, top 8, top 16? What's your thoughts?
I think we're still definitely a top 8 contender. There's a lot of very good, very strong teams coming out, and a lot of very good, very expensive comps that we're seeing come out, which is why I'd be nervous about saying we can potentially punch back up into the top 4. But I think we are still a very strong team, and we've got a lot of ability to bounce back if we can get ourselves in the right mindset coming into this sort of Super Saturday that we're coming into.
You've ended up against Templis Calciv, one of the, I mean, I would say they're high top 8 standard, if not even top 4 potential. They're an extremely good team. So this will be really the real proper test of Laserhawks. If they can get past Templis, I think you've got a couple of matches potentially you could easily take. But getting through Templis is going to be a huge hurdle that you guys are going to have to try and get over. In the meantime, BSOD go forward to face, I believe it's the Castabouts, who managed to knock ABA down into the losers bracket, and wasn't quite as big an upset as the ones we're talking about, but I'd say it was probably still an upset. So that'll be a very interesting match to watch BSOD go up against Castabouts on Saturday. Jintan, I'm going to bring you in on this one specifically because it involves your wee brothers in arms, the Samurai Sold Out team, who beat We Form Volta, my team. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about that match?
No, this match was actually really, really cool. It was one of those matches where both teams have very, very little logistics and kind of leads to this really like bloody match where both sides are just trading ship after ship against one another. And at the end of it, it seemed like Samurai Sold Out was able to make things happen just by the grace of some very, very small piloting decisions. And I think it's something you mentioned actually earlier was that the captain of the Volta team, Annie, burnt out their guns, and that's something that's just like, considering how close this match was, you can't help but think that if that hadn't happened, Volta would be walking away with the win here. I really have to compliment Volta, especially for their piloting using those MJD beacons to burn themselves to safety when they needed to. It reminded me of the old days of the drone kite compositions back in the early days of AT-14 and 13.
I think it's fair to say both teams, apart from Annie, flew extremely well. We saw a lot of individual piloting. We saw Nathan in that Harbinger use that micro jump drive beacon. He activated that, jumps 100 kilometers away out of DPS range and survived to live another day and keep applying damage. We saw the two logistics frigates on the Samurai Sold Out team do a really great job keeping each other alive. The positioning was fantastic. They were flying in and out, repping, saving each other. Genuinely, it was a very good match to watch from a piloting perspective. So, Tonya, did you manage to catch that particular match?
Yeah, I saw glimpses of it. Yeah, like you mentioned, there was a lot of really good MGD piloting by the Volta team. Whenever one of their battle cruisers would get low, they would MGD away, and then Starfleet Commando in the solo Thalia would then sort of just rep them back up while they're sort of out of harm's way and in like long range. If Samurai wanted to continue killing them, they had to reload into long range ammo and snipe at them while the Thalia was repping them. And then meanwhile, the remaining Volta ships that were left sort of unfazed can just do max damage at close range. So yeah, there was a lot of really good piloting from Volta, just in terms of like their positional play all the time. And when like a Harbinger, I think it was like really low, stopped taking damage, he like sort of came back in again, and it was really good to see them just juggle the heat, so to say. Probably a bad thing with what happened to Annie, but being able to just like constantly like go in and go out.
Yeah, so Samurai Sold Out move forward in the winners bracket. They're going to be up against Vidra Reloaded. Volta dropping into the losers bracket. We'll see them a couple of times this weekend. Now, the real interesting part about this particular match involves a bet between Suetonia and Jintan. Jin, can you just tell us exactly what that bet is?
Yeah, on the first weekend that myself and Suetonia are in the office, we have a tradition of having bets between us. On the first year, it was over a very crap hat from Poundland that we went out and bought the day before. You might remember it was pink and glittery and the start of a terrible, terrible fashion sense for myself. After, I believe the next year it was between Waffles and CVA, and we decided to bet cat ears upon that, which was interesting, and I lost there again. So 2 in a row lost for me. This year I decided to give myself an actual chance and put my dignity on the line in the hands of Samurai Sold Out, and they've been doing amazingly with it so far. And I've really loved watching them as well. They're a team I've always loved. If you actually go back and listen to me talk about them in years past, I've always had a soft spot in my heart for them. They've always brought their own take on the meta. They did a lot of fly killing. That was their preferred comp up until this year. And I always found those really interesting to watch. And it's great to see them put some of that piloting skill to use in more traditional compositions.
So, as far as I'm aware, Samurai Sold Out only need like one more victory for you to win the bet, but there is still possibility that they drop down and then come back later on. So it's an exciting thing to watch out for. Either you're going to see Jin Tan embarrassing himself on stream yet again, or maybe Satoni this year. This could be an absolute change. At the moment, Jin Tan is on. All he needs now is for Samurai Sold Out to beat Vidra, which could be interesting. And then if they do, it's going to be NC or Skill yourself. So an interesting road for Samurai Sold Out, but they are not out of the competition yet. Now, speaking of looking to future matches, let's talk now about some of the matches that we're going to see this weekend and potentially some of the most hype matches that we're going to see. So that one I just mentioned, Vidra versus Samurai Sold Out. Jin, you're basically the champions of Samurai Sold Out at this point. How do you think they're going to fare against a team like Vidra?
Vidra is one of the hardest teams to come up against in the competition, in my opinion. I believe in Samurai Sold Out to do it, but it's a very shaky belief, you know. Vidra have obviously shown they've got a lot of really, really strong compositions in their sleeve, and we've only seen a couple of compositions from Samurai Sold Out, and they've both been very interesting takes on the meta, but not the same very slow, methodical, control-focused takes that we've seen Vidra and Hydra and Pandemic Legion and Northern Coalition and those other traditionally top-tier teams use. Samurai Sold Out are going in there with these very aggressive all-in setups, and if Vidra can figure them out beforehand and get some eyes onto what they're intending to do, then it could be game over for Samurai Sold Out. Vidra just have such a strong theory crafting team that any leaks could really cost Samurai, you know, their whole tournament dream here, and knock them down into facing an absolute, you know, terrifying match. They've got to either face the Kingslayers probably in Templars, or, you know, maybe Pandemic Legion, something along those lines. Be absolutely terrible for them.
I don't think they will. Looking at the bracket, they're loser of 99, which would put them on 108. So they would have to play the winner of Laserhawks, Templars, Test, or ABA.
Okay, so that's pretty winnable for them. But
yeah, that's if they win at least that match, even if they go out after that, they would come in 8th place and you would win the bet. They'll be 7th or 8th, depending on points. But Templates and Laserhawks are still pretty strong. It's going to be a good match for them, I think. And, you know, Test have been a bit rocky this year. So is ABA. So, I mean, I kind of predict it's going to be... I would really like to see Templates versus Samurai there.
Yeah, I think Templars versus Samurai would be amazing, because it's the two big upset teams, the teams that have historically killed these bigger teams. So watching those two play each other with that very scrappy, kind of puggy style is going to be real good fun.
So speaking of Templars being sort of one of the upset teams, Bart, I'm going to bring you in on this one here. So we got Laserhawks versus Templars. We briefly touched on that in the previous segment, but what do you expect from that match? Like, tell us, why are Templars kind of considered to be one of the upset teams? What happened to give them that kind of reputation?
I mean, so Templars is considered to be one of the upset teams because something that happened last year. And like, once we're about 2 or 3 weeks into the AT, which we will be 3 weeks in less than, I think, 36 hours, I don't really think that what happened last year matters anymore. At this point, like, people are always like, oh, Pandemic Legion is so good, and, you know, last year they got 8th place. Well, if they get 1st place this year, no one's going to care that they got 8th place last year, right? So, you know, Templars, they beat Hydra round 1 last year, which was like this huge upset, which nobody expected. Hydra's team comp was pretty garbage. Templars brought something that countered it pretty hard. But, you know, here again, at the end, we have Hydra is still in the winner's bracket. Templars is in the loser's bracket. What happened last year doesn't really matter at this point, in my opinion. I will say, though, that this year, the Templars team has been looking extremely strong. Like, just because they're in the lower bracket, I believe that the reason why they are down there is because they barely lost to Pandemic Legion. Like, it was, you know, it was one of those games where if it had gone another minute or so, I think Templars would have actually muted Pandemic Legion out and won the match. So Templars is still looking really strong here, but I'm saying they're looking strong because of this year, not because of the upset from last year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, they've been incredible this year. I think they have one of the most memorable matches from day one, right? The bombing run that they did.
Yeah, they had this crazy bombing run that basically says, like, that's one of those things you look at and you say, okay, this team knows their stuff. Like, they understand it. And again, they lost to PL. by about a minute. If the match had lasted another minute, they would have gotten a couple more newt cycles off, and I think they would have won that. So, when we're looking at Templars versus Laserhawks coming up, I really have to say, like, of those two teams, Templars has been looking really strong. Laserhawks has basically, potatoed their way and just lost their first match that actually mattered, where Templars has barely lost one of their matches that mattered. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping for Alexi's sake it's not going to prove something, but I have this feeling that we're about to see Laserhawks get knocked out on very early in weekend 3.
So I'll tell you what, then let's do a little bit of predictions. The first match that we just briefly spoke about, Vidra versus Samurai. Let me just run down the team here and see what you guys think. Is it going to be an upset? Is it going to be kind of predictable that Vidra take it? Alexi, what do you think?
For Vidra Samurai?
For Vidra Samurai, yeah.
I think as a bet, in terms of where I'd put my money, it has to be Vidra.
And Bart, what about you?
I really want to see Samurai win because I kind of expect NC to, if NC beats Skill U, I don't want to have them fight Vidra because Vidra's really good. But I'm pretty sure Vidra's going to win that one.
Jen, what are you going for here? You going to back your boys?
I've got to back my boys. You know me, man. I believe in the power of friendship and love and belief and all that.
And Satonia?
I think Vidra are probably going to win. I think it's I don't know. I'd say it's like 80% Vidra, 20% Samurai. I think Samurai's only real chance is if they end up in like a similar comp versus Vidra and they somehow end up out executing them. But I think Vidra just has like a much deeper bag of tricks than Samurai do.
I agree with you guys, to be honest. Like, I think Vidra will win. I kind of want Samurai to win just because I think it would be fun, but I don't think it's going to happen. How about then Hawks versus Templars? Alexei, I guess you're going to be backing your own team here.
Yeah, like I have a hell of a lot of respect for Templars. I've had a taste of what it's like to fly with them. We've done a fair amount of scrimming with them over the years, and I've actually flown in Templars on TQ. They are really good guys, but right now I've got to say they're going to be shitlords and we're going to stomp them.
Bart, how about you? What do you think? Hawks or Templars?
Templars has shown that they're a good team this year. Hawks has not shown they're a good team yet. They still have an opportunity to do so, but Templars is just like they're looking top 8, maybe top 4. Hawks is not looking top 8 in my mind.
In our defense, we've had half as many matches as they have so far.
Right. That makes it even, that shows it even more though, right? It means they can last this long.
Well, you're saying that they don't last long. They got no endurance.
Oh, I'll save those for this Saturday.
So, Jen, what about you? Hawks or Templars?
I think I'm actually going to go for Templars as well. Templars are the strongest, one of the stronger teams, in my opinion. I think I'll echo pretty much everything BVP said there.
Satonia, any changes to that?
Oh, I pretty much agree with what everyone's been saying. I think both of these teams this is probably going to be like one of the best fights in the losers bracket on the Saturday coming up. Templars have just looked like completely solid all throughout the tournament, and because Laserhawks got the bye, we haven't really seen them actually play all that much. I think they've only played 2 games so far, whereas we've seen 4 out of Templars. I think Templars have just proven themselves a lot more in this tournament thus far, but not because Laserhawks haven't had the opportunity to. So I think I would lean slightly in favor of Templars, but I think it's going to be a very close match.
Yeah, I think this is quite easily a win for Templars, barring something going horribly wrong for them. I think, as Bart says, they've just shown multiple times already in weekend 1 and weekend 2 that they are a good team, and not just top 8, but potentially top 4. So I think Laserhawks just aren't that good by comparison this year, and it will be a Templars win. Speaking of matches in the losers bracket, Pandemic Legion down in the losers bracket now, right in there from weekend 2 after getting knocked down by NC. They come up this weekend against Barcode Alliance, who were knocked down in week 1 in kind of a bit of an upset there. Guys, I mean, let's go to Tony. What do you think about this match between PL and Barcode?
Barcode have looked a bit shaky to me, to be honest. They were a team that I thought were going to be pretty good, but they have definitely not looked as good as I thought they would. And I mean, I guess you could kind of say like a similar thing about PL a little bit, although not to the same degree as the Barcode team. I think Pandemic Legion has this like maybe 80%, 20%. I'd say this is kind of similar to Vidra versus Samurai. I think the only way that Thermodynamics, or sorry, Barcode wins is if they just out execute PL, which can happen for sure, but Pandemic Legion just has a much deeper bag of tricks than the Barcode team, I think, and if they bring those tricks out, then I don't think they have much of a chance to win.
Yeah, we haven't really seen Barcode, Thermodynamics, Team Chester, whatever you want to call them. I haven't really seen them bring anything that was like, okay, this is a good on-meta AT team. I've seen them bring in a couple things that are like, okay, well, it kind of reminds me of like the drone ball setups last year, where you do all drone ships with no logi and just kite around. They kind of are doing the same thing this year. It's like, well, if we're better pilots than you and we're a better team than you, we win. But there's another level to that. It's not just about being better pilots and being generally better as a team. It's also about bringing a better comp, right? And I don't think Thermodynamics is actually capable of bringing a better comp because they have not shown anything that's really good as a team comp. Like, they beat Seven Sins with rapid light kiting stuff, which is great. But if Seven Sins had been slightly better pilots with their Balgorn, that would not have happened. So, they're going up against Pandemic Legion. And regardless of what Pandemic Legion's, regardless of how they're doing this year, regardless of how they're doing last year, Pandemic Legion is really good at theory crafting. Piloting wise, I hope they're good. Team wise, I think it's a little shaky just because of the mix-ups that they constantly have. But theory crafting, they're really dang good at it. Thermodynamics has not shown that part of their arsenal yet, and I don't think they're going to be able to. So pretty much what Suetonia said, just more long-winded.
So the final match I want to talk about coming up.
Whoa! Do I not get a say about this one?
No, Jintan, get back in your box.
I didn't actually want to give predictions about this match in particular, but I wanted to point out what the brackets allow here, and it is the legendary Elise Randolph's worst nightmare, the Pandemic Legion Initiative rematch in the losers bracket. He's seen this film before, and it didn't end well for PL. I can't wait.
Oh yeah, we got some super awesome rematch potential this year, actually, of like a lot of the upsets from last year getting to go round 2 again.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, but we're going to see Hydra Reloaded go up against the Tuskers. Last year, Hydra were the team that knocked the Tuskers out, if I remember correctly.
They knocked the Tuskers out of AT13 as well, so it's kind of a bit of a grudge.
There you go, grudge
Tuskers.
upon grudge. So we're going to see Hydra go up on a best of 1 against the Tuskers on Saturday. Guys, Bart, what do you make of this match here? We've got Hydra knocking Tuskers out in 2 Alliance tournaments. Can they do it again?
Yeah, this is the match. Like, in all honesty, I believe it's on Saturday. I might not be 100% correct on that, but I'm almost positive this is the Saturday match. This is the one to watch because Tuskers is absolutely still a top 4 team. They got first place 2 years ago. They got unlucky, I would say, and got taken down by Hydra, who was second place last year, but they still played really dang good. And they're an extremely good team, and they've been actually showing themselves really good this year. Like, every match that they've played, to be fair, they went up against the Bastion, who's trash, and kind of dunked them. But their match versus Triumvirate, or not their match versus Triumvirate, their match versus Exodus was disgusting. Like, Tuskers were alphaing through faction battleships, like, without even controlling the logistics. So Tuskers is looking like ridiculously strong right now. And Hydra is also looking ridiculously strong as usual. So I think like this is the match to watch. If there's anybody who has a chance of taking Hydra into the lowers bracket this year at all, it's Tuskers. So we should all be like super hyped about it, and really happy about it, and really glad that this is happening early as opposed to, kind of later. Like, it's good that Hydra is getting put up against a like super strong team early this year, because I feel like last year they kind of had a pretty smooth sailing towards the end.
I mean, it kind of helps when you're in the losers bracket, though, for that. From
Oh
day
yeah,
one.
no, they ended up in the losers bracket day one, and then just had like the whole joke about them farming skins. I mean, they got like 110 skins or something like that. But
I don't
most
think
of their
the
lower
path
bracket
was
teams
that.
they dunked.
I mean, maybe it's because I was on the team and I kind of remember it a lot less fondly because, playing, I think it was 9 best of ones back to back is pretty awful. That you have to win every one. But I mean, there were quite a few good teams there. I think there was Hard Knocks, which, not great, but were pretty decent. Then I think we had PL into NC Dot, into Exodus, into the Tuskers. That's a pretty... I think it was the best of one with PL, best of one with Exodus, and then a best of one with the Tuskers.
I'd have to look again, but you didn't hit PL until the final week, or NC Dot until the final weekend. But yeah, from what I remember, the Tuskers team actually brought a mirror comp of the Exodus team, so you basically got to fight the same match twice with slightly better pilots in the second one, and it was not a very good team setup from either of them. So I think you guys just kind of dumpstered them. But I'd have to rewatch it, so it could just be talking out of my butt.
So what do you think, Jin? This one of the best matches, if not the best match this weekend?
It's definitely the most highly anticipated match. I will give it that. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to see, like, specifically if anyone tries to bring out something new, though. I think that's always the question when you see teams like this head up, like, a little earlier than they perhaps should. If we were going to structure a tournament to, like, make sure that the best 2 teams faced off in, like, the quarterfinals or semifinals or something like that.
There's always a bit of a difference between 2 top-tier teams going up against in the winners bracket and the losers bracket, because in the losers bracket, if you lose, you're out. Whereas in the winners bracket, there's still a bit of buffer. So, I mean, do we expect to see Hydra and Vidra bringing absolutely everything to win this match, or are they going to bring sort of middle of the road and maybe accept a loss? What do you think here, Jin?
Yeah, I think Hydra are going to be more apt to kind of go all out and try and make sure they ensure the win. And that's just because the Tuskers have less to lose. I think Hydra should be expecting to get into the finals at this point. I don't think they would accept anything less, and I think that's good. Whereas Tuskers are a little more scrappy this year. They're not riding off that second place, the second place that Hydra was from last year. They've definitely shown themselves to be a good team, but taking out Exodus is a great example of that. But the real question is, do they think they can beat Hydra comfortably enough with a setup that's not out of the box? Or do they think that they need to go and try and find something really unique and interesting and try and cheese this best of one as hard as they can so that they can scooch on into that semi-final?
So let's wrap this up and go round and just get some predictions on that match particularly. So I'm going to go down everybody again. In fact, I'll go from the bottom. Why not? So Tonya, Hydra or Tuskers?
I'm going to go with Hydra just because they're kind of my boys from before. And they've beaten the Tuskers, I think, 3 times in the Alliance Tournament total, twice in AT13 and in AT15. So I'd say they have the pedigree and the history of beating them.
Jintan.
I'm going to go for Tuskers. I think Tuskers will actually will be incentivized to pull out something a little out of the box and kind of just hit Hydra from an angle they don't expect.
Bart, what do you think, Tuskers or Hydra?
I'm feeling Hydra, but I'm kind of with Jin, like in the same way, where I'm just thinking that Tuskers they are going to pull something out of the box and meta themselves into losing in this, instead of like what he's saying, which is they're going to meta themselves into winning. So,
and finally, Alexei.
I think I'm going to have to go with Tuskers here. I think same as with Samurai against Vidra. If I was really having to put money on it, I might go Hydra, but I really want to see Tuskers do this, and I properly believe that they could. They are one of the best high-sec hauling corps I've ever known and worked with, and they are going to be fantastic in the AT.
Yeah, to be honest, I am going to put my money on the Tuskers on this particular one. Hydra is a fantastic team. So the Tuskers, they have absorbed Exodus, best pilots from last year. They've been practicing really hard, and I think that if, as I think Tony mentioned, or sorry, if Jin mentioned, if any team that can beat Hydra in this bracket right now, it's going to be the Tuskers. I think whoever wins this match and goes forward is going to stomp all over the winner of Brightside or Castabouts. I think we're probably all in agreement there that the Hydra Tuskers side of that bracket is the bracket to watch in this match. But we have reached pretty much the end of the show. So this has been Alliance Tournament Explained. Hopefully we answered some of your questions, some of the insights presented by some of our guys here, perhaps answered some of your questions. If you have more questions, of course, please feel free to ask them to us directly at some point. We will be back next week, I believe, at 2200 next Wednesday to go over weekend 3 and look forward to the finals on weekend 4. I've been Ithaca Hawk. I've been joined by Alexi Aksan, Black Bart P8, EQ11, Jin Tan, and Sutonia. Tune in on Saturday at 1300 Eve time for the continuation of Alliance Tournament 16. Until then, have a good evening.